Early last year, I decided that I wanted to build my own guitar. I knew if I was going to go to the trouble of making my own guitar that it had to be something special and more unique. It had to be better than just copying a regular body style like a Telecaster or a Strat that you see every day. After a bit of thought, I decided on making a guitar similar to that of one of my favorite guitar players, Keith Richards. It's definitely one of his more obscure guitars that most people are unaware of. It in fact was his first of many custom-made guitars, which would make my build a custom guitar. Ted Newman Jones was one of many thousand excited 20-year-old concert-goers in 1969 when the Stones were expected to play in Georgia. Having a friend with backstage access, he managed to sneak in before the show started, stumbling into B.B. King and Chuck Berry before meeting Keith for the first time. A couple years later, after becoming a well-experienced guitar repairman, even doing some work for Eric Clapton, Jones traveled to the Rolling Stones office in London to try and locate the band again. There, the ladies were so captured by his southern accent, they told him everything he needed to know. The band was staying in a villa in the south of France, recording what would become Exile on Main Street. So off he went by train from Paris down to Nice, where he found the villa easily, spotting the famous huge bus turned into a mobile recording studio outside of it. Finally there, he presented Keith with a Rickenbacker guitar he had restored to give to him, at which point Keith actually paid him $300 for it. After this meeting, Keith always remembered Jones and the drive that he had to bring him from Georgia to his own villa's doorstep in France. The villa was infamous for its debauchery and chaos. Couple that with the revolving door of groupies and drug dealers, Keith lost many guitars during that period in 1971 and entrusted Jones with replacing and repairing the ones he had. With the upcoming 1972 summer tour, Keith needed someone to look after all of his different guitars and a variety of tunings in order to keep the shows moving along. And so at only the age of 22, Ted Newman Jones would tag along with the Rolling Stones on their legendary 1972 American tour and became the first guitar tech in rock history.
Alright, just unscrew this. Okay, that's it. Television's boring anyway. We come a little bit this way so as we make sure we hit the garbage area. That's it, right? Alright. Okay, tell us when. Okay. Okay? Now.
After the tour, Keith gave Jones $20,000 to set up a guitar shop in Texas to focus mainly on building his own guitars, primarily to supply Keith. Which finally takes us to the guitar I started to build. Ted gave this custom 5-string guitar to Keith in late 1972, and it was used heavily throughout 1973 on all their tour dates that year, opening shows with Brown Sugar and later on playing Honky Tonk Women as well as a few other hits. The guitar only uses 5 strings because it's tuned differently than a regular guitar in what's known as open G tuning, and in most cases this tuning makes the top heavy string redundant, so it is removed for ease of playability.
I started off by using ordinary guitars and just taking the bottom string off, which is alright, it works fine like that, except that a guy working with us who looks after guitars, a young cowboy called Newman Jones, and we got talking and we decided to try and make one up, you know, and he's made a couple for me since then that are really 5-string guitars with everything made especially for 5 strings, you know, and it makes it easier to play slightly than
The original is clearly a crude design, with even Jones admitting he used a screwdriver as a chisel for most of its construction, making me figure it would make for a perfect first guitar build, as the bar isn't set very high if you're using screwdrivers as woodworking tools. The other reason I decided on this guitar is because I actually got to see this guitar in person in the Traveling Rolling Stones Museum, which first sparked the idea of building it. The original body's front is made from rosewood xylophone keys all glued together into a solid piece. It may seem bizarre, but this is because Brazilian rosewood is extremely rare and endangered from centuries of overharvesting, so Jones did what he had to do to fabricate one solid piece of it. Today now, rosewood can only be legally obtained and used by guitar manufacturers if it was harvested prior to 1992, when law protecting the wood from legal harvest was first implemented. As for the back, it's made of cherry, which doesn't have any great backstory to it. Overall, as I've said before, this guitar is rather plain, crude, and simple, which is exactly what I wanted, but at the same time is very unique and storied. As for my build, I knew right away rosewood was off the table, so I went with a walnut front, which would provide the same kind of dark brown look. And cherry was still affordable, so I used it for the back. Most of the real technical math and numbers work in guitar building is all in the neck and fret installation, which required specialty tools which I wasn't going to buy to build one guitar. So I turned to Amazon and bought a neck as similar as the original one I could find. I was pleasantly surprised how well they could manufacture a neck at such a quality for that price, knowing the work and precision that's needed to make them properly. After gluing all the wood slabs together and planing it flat, I finally settled on the body shape, which was similar enough for my liking, and cut it out on the bandsaw. The next step was routing out and trimming the neck pocket to the exact size and depth. This is critical because if the depth of the neck pocket is off by only a few millimeters, the strings will sit too high off the fretboard, making it almost impossible to play well. After the neck is in place, it's time to place the bridge, which also has a very specific spot on the guitar. In this case, it's 25.5 inches from the start of the fretboard at what is known as the nut, down in a perfectly straight and centered line to its place screwed into the guitar body. After these steps are completed, the stress is off and it's time to start routing out the cavities for the neck and bridge pickups, which is relatively easy. The pickups are made using 6 magnets, one for each string, wound in thousands of wraps of wire to create a magnetic field which picks up the vibration of the steel string, converting it into an electric noise. I also managed to find pickups that were almost identical to the original guitars off of Amazon as well. I routed the hole to which all the electronic wires and components are held and shielded it all in tinfoil to stop rogue electric frequencies from making noise in the pickups, which can happen at random if you're pretty much near anything electrical. You can even pick up radio and TV signals if you're in the perfect spot. After all the roughing work was done, then began the long process of sanding and sanding and sanding up to 2000 grit sandpaper, at which point a light coat of finish was applied just enough to shield the raw wood and give the grains some pop. Since this already wasn't a one-to-one recreation of the original, I decided to give the guitar a bit of a tribute to where it came from and sacrificed a Some Girls LP to make the electronics cover for the guitar. With the body done, I just had to cut out the headstock shape and drill the holes for the tuners. I used abalone shell for the inlays because I love the look of them on a guitar. After drilling the holes by eye exactly 4 millimeters deep into the fretboard, the fitment was so tight I didn't even have to use glue. I couldn't have got them out if I wanted to. Then all that was left was to screw on the neck and finally unite the two pieces and make a guitar. After fixing some electrical gremlins in the wiring and cutting down the string slots to their proper depth in the nut using a hacksaw blade, the completely wrong tool for the job, staying in true Ted Newman Jones fashion, which would make any professional luthier cringe, I had in my hands a complete homemade Keith Richards custom guitar.